Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Energy Stoners Cafe and Talk with TQ. As always, I try to bring the most interesting people I can find on the planet to present to you. Well, today is one of those very special days. I'm on location at the Hudson Valley Museum of Contemporary Art in Peekskill, New York, at the Studio Theater of Exile. And I'm interviewing a fabulous artist. And I was been talking to her a little bit before we started this interview, and we have a lot of things in common, a couple of things way in common. Her name is V.L. Cox. She is an artist that is very focused on what is going on these days on the planet. In particular, in this country, her art is very much focused on social justice, and I'm thoroughly intrigued with the work that she does. VL, thanks so much for coming to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how do you like it here in New York so far in
I love
Peekskill?
it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so we are feeding you enough, right?
Oh my gosh, I have put some weight on because of your bagels and pizza. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah, if you lose it, maybe I'll find it.
nice,
I could do some of that these days.
nice.
But I'm very intrigued by the fact that you came from Arkansas and you found your way here at the Studio Theater in Exile at the MoCA in Hudson Valley. How did you get here?
Well, years ago, I met someone. Well, I came up to visit some friends because my
Mm-hmm.
work started taking off
Mm-hmm.
as far as the civil rights and social justice
Mm-hmm.
work. I've been an artist for 30 something years, but in 2015, everything changed when they tried to pass some of the religious freedom bills down
Yeah.
in Arkansas that were so dangerously and recklessly written.
Mm-hmm.
It brought back Jim Crow laws overnight,
Wow.
and it affected everybody. And so I did this series of doors here in protest, just to make a statement that when you start separating people and putting them in a second class, status, then you're denying them human being status, basically. And so it has just exploded. I woke up the next day, they're all over Yahoo News, everything like that. So I had an opportunity to show them in New York in 2016. And so I started coming up to visit because I'd never been this far north before. I made some good friends up here. So I was invited to a talk at the Bean Runner in a town called Peekskill, which I'd never heard of before. And I met Carla Ray Johnson.
Oh, Carla Ray.
And when I got back to Arkansas, I was so motivated by the talk that I'd been to, and she was so nice and everybody was so kind. I called her from Arkansas and we started, communicating. So fast forward, the Doors started touring. I did a museum tour out of Virginia for 2 years. They just kept touring more and more and more. And so COVID hit. And so I ended up back in Arkansas after that, after the museum tour, stayed there through COVID. And the bill that we had fought so hard against, back in 2015, they pushed it through during COVID when no one could fight back, basically, which denies life saving medical care or even a sandwich in a restaurant to someone if someone doesn't want to serve you because of their sincerely held religious beliefs. And I knew then that it was time to go. I started really feeling disheartened, and it was getting difficult. And so I had some friends up here said, "You really ought to go to Peekskill," and that's how I ended up here. And
Yeah.
I've been very happy.
I'm glad you're happy. Peekskill's
Yeah,
got a very rich history, and they have a history with regard to civil rights, which I'm sure you've heard something about that as
right,
well.
right.
So, but you decided to take and sort of upcycle, it looks like, people's bathroom doors, you know?
Yeah, these doors actually came from the theater. I don't know what parts of the buildings they came from, but they came from the theater, the Black Theater District
Mm-hmm.
in Little Rock, Arkansas, where after segregation, because I lived through desegregation, after desegregation, they just basically built the interstate right through the black community to separate once again.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these old theaters and buildings and houses were destroyed and torn down. There's a guy that started buying up some of the dilapidated surviving properties, and he was starting to hire local, members of the community to help build the houses back up, trying to build the communities back. And he had a lot of these old doors from all these old buildings just stored in an old house. And when he had found out what I wanted to do with the doors as a protest thing, he gave them to me. So they're all very historic, except for a couple of them from that time period. And so I don't know what they came from, but they're very old and very
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah. And you sort of kept the distressed look about them. I noticed that just in
Yes.
looking at it technically. But I saw this online. I saw this particular display online, and I was like really taken aback by it. I felt, sometimes you look at a piece of art, especially something that has social relevance,
Right.
and you just get a little bit choked up when you see that.
Right.
And you think about, like, your ancestors, whether you're white or black or whatever, and the kind of things that they lived through.
Right.
Now, I have to make note that you said something about building an interstate through a black community or through a community. And it's interesting how you were able to notice
Yeah.
the subtlety
Right.
of segregation, the subtlety of discrimination and racism. It's funny because most people don't realize that. They think, oh, we'll just build this road right here.
Yeah. It was on purpose, and it
Yeah.
happened in a lot of communities. It seems like the Jim Crow mentality completely just continues to evolve. And where they can't do this, then they'll figure out something else to do, which is happening up to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mass incarceration, and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the interstate system, if you really start reading about it, you know, because I started noticing that, and then I
Yeah.
started trying to read more and learn more about it after talking to this guy. And it's just incredible how prevalent it was.
It destroys the community.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious also as how you, who's, a lovely white woman, who was once a lovely white girl, you know, um, became so socially conscious. It doesn't happen unless usually unless you've experienced something personally.
Yeah, my mother had a substance abuse problem, and she was very abusive. And so my grandmother, who was a sweet little second grade school teacher, raised me. And she was like, she's the syrupy Southern, mannerisms and
Mm.
everything. But she was so kind and so sweet, and everybody loved her. And one of her closest friends was a woman named Queen Victoria, QV. She did domestic work during the time because her husband worked for the railroad and he had passed away, and he didn't have a pension, which I'm sure a lot of black men did not have pensions back then. They just didn't give it to them.
Right.
And so my grandmother and several of her school teacher friends, they were all widow women, and they put together a pension fund for her, and she would come over like on Saturday, and she and my grandmother would make a pot of coffee, and she was a companion and a friend also because my grandmother was trying to raise me by herself. But they'd make a pot of coffee and they would iron sheets together and then sit at the kitchen table and talk. And they would talk
Nice.
about, the youth of today and all these things. Well, she didn't drive, and so as I got older, I would give her a ride home as I learned to drive. And she was the first person to tell me who Martin Luther King was.
Oh,
And I hadn't heard about him. It's not that my grandmother didn't tell me, she probably just didn't think about it.
yeah.
But she would tell me these things, and I learned so much from her. And so I did a series of screen doors in 1991, my senior year in college. Started painting people behind screen doors to tell the story of the South. And she was the first door I painted. And it won a purchase award between the two universities. I split the
Wow.
money with her. And that series is a 32-year series to this day that is still ongoing, thanks to
Wow.
her.
So what is it called? Screen
It's
doors?
called the Images of the American South series, is what it was called. It's on my website.
Mm-hmm.
But I got the idea because I'd given her a ride home, and her son had taken the screen door off of her house
Mm-hmm.
and set it out where the trash could come get it. He put a new door. And I said, "Oh my gosh, can I take a photo of you behind the door? And can I have that door? You're gonna throw it away." She goes, "Of course you can." To this day, I still have the original photograph of her standing behind the door.
Oh, I'd love to see
She was
that.
my first. I'll show it to you. She was my first model. But I learned so much from her, and her daughter, Miss Annie Abrams, is a very famous activist, in Little Rock to this day. And I have nothing but the most utmost respect for her and her family, and I owe them a great deal.
Yeah, well, I
Gratitude.
think somebody put a spark in your mind, because
Yeah,
this I have never seen anything quite like this. Although, and I knew it that the segregation, I know about Jim Crow,
right,
but I've never seen anybody break it down. It's not just black and white, you
right.
know. You have LBGT, and you have everything here, and you can't help but think that some of my best friends, which is so cliche to say, but I'm wondering back in the day, what was it really, really like? Because even though we knew about it growing up, we didn't experience it.
Yeah.
So this exhibit, has it shown anywhere else? Tell me where else it's tell me where it's going. Where has this exhibit been before? Because it must have been somewhere else before it got here.
It has. It has shut. The doors, especially, have shown at the LGBT Center in New York. They showed at the Rosa Parks Museum. I have shown at the Rosa Parks Museum 3 times now. We have an incredible relationship. Work very well together, and the work seems, with having such an international following that they have, it's been very impactful. The Virginia Holocaust Museum, the Longwood Center for the Visual Arts Museum in Virginia, and of course the Virginia Holocaust Museum is in Richmond, Virginia. Showed in Fayetteville, Arkansas. They got the doors back from New York and wanted to show them down there. And oh my gosh, it's shown in so many places. A lot of the times they were the doors. We put them in the back of a pickup truck before the museum tour started, and we were driving them around to small cities in Arkansas trying to get equality ordinances passed for protection. And so we would set the doors up, and then people would come and we would talk about all this. We were so successful with passing the equality ordinance, the ordinances for protection down there while we were fighting these bills. The legislative session called a session to meet to enact the Interstate Commerce Act to stop us from getting all these protections, these kind of bills passed in different communities. So now it has to be a statewide thing. But the fact that they had to meet to even do that shows how successful we were. And I truly believe that we were so successful, and the conversations around these doors have been so successful because it's such a simple message. And the arts, I have learned, seems to cross religious and political boundaries with ease, which is why people are struggling to communicate, so much these days. But the arts seem to be hurdling over that. And so the conversations, those difficult conversations, can be had.
Yeah.
And it's really been an eye-opening experience because a lot of the people that I have talked to, they've been at the Lincoln Memorial twice.
Wow.
Yeah. I've talked to people from all around the world when they have shown there. And, I've talked to people that vote differently than me, that pray differently than me, that believe differently than me. And yet we can carry a conversation on with each other and agree on several things, but they get the message of the doors.
Yeah.
And so it's been really impactful and very powerful. They're showing here, of course. They're going to show in Cincinnati next year. That'll be the second time they've shown in Cincinnati.
Okay. Cincinnati's almost like the South. They have an accent like you in Cincinnati,
Yeah,
Ohio.
yeah, they're pretty cool. There's a lot
Yeah.
of cool people there, and
Yeah.
the arts are doing very well there.
That's good to know.
I was invited to take the doors out west and work with an indigenous group of teenagers out there to maybe add an indigenous door, and that didn't work out just because they didn't have the budget to get them out there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a lot more.
Yeah. Go
They
on. It's okay. Go on.
Yeah, well, during COVID, they had a public art, exhibition. I think 11 artists were chosen nationwide, and I was one of the ones chosen for the Billboard series here in New York, and they were put on a billboard and shown then
Now, you
too.
won an award for the organization that does the Billboard series. Am I not mistaken?
Well, you mean the one during COVID?
I guess it was during COVID.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was Save Art Space and Art at a Time Like This, two nonprofits that went together because everyone was under lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I showed with artists like Dred Scott, Marilyn Minter, a whole lot of artists that I actually look up to. It was, I didn't get an award, but just being chosen for that was an enormous,
That's a big feather in
it
your
was a
cap,
big thing. It
in
really
your
was.
Yankees cap.
I know. I love my cap. The exhibition was chosen as one of the top 20 exhibitions in 2020 for the New York Times.
Yes, I read that. I was like, wow, and she's going to
Yeah.
talk to me.
And the doors have been picked up in art magazines all around the world.
It's
So,
very special, and I'm wondering also, being that you've shown this exhibit in the South. How does the collective in the South receive you? I'm curious.
well, they received the doors very, very well at first. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just blew up on me because
Yeah,
everyone got it.
yeah.
Part of the reason I came up with the concept
Mm-hmm.
is because we get a lot of tornadoes down there. Well,
Yeah,
a tornado had blown through,
yeah.
and one of the buildings was damaged, and one of the original white only, colored only door was there. I mean,
Oh,
they're still around down there.
yeah.
They're just in back rooms, and they're still in old buildings and things like that. And also during that time that I had seen a story about some kids who had killed a homeless person just because he was homeless. All this hit at the same time, and that's what gave me the idea to do this series. After living through desegregation, it was really eye-opening as I got older of the things I did not know and was not taught. During the end of the museum tour, I ended up at the Delta Cultural Center from Richmond, Virginia, and it's in Helena, Arkansas, which is right down the road from Elaine. And it was the 100-year anniversary of the Elaine Massacre. And so they unveiled the Elaine Massacre Memorial. The work was showing there, all this stuff. I live 2 hours from there, and I've lived in Arkansas most of my life, and I've never heard of the Elaine Massacre. So I have learned more the past 10 years I've been doing this body of work than I have known and been taught my entire life. It truly shows you how much history has been whitewashed.
What were you taught?
I was taught that, for an example, the Civil War was fought over states' rights, and the northern aggressors were coming down to take our rich farmlands and taxes on our cotton and things like that. I was taught the lost cause, and slavery was mentioned, but we never talked about slavery that much. I didn't know there were plantations even in Arkansas. I didn't know any of that. And so a lot of people to this day, especially in these small rural communities, a lot of these kids are still being taught that. And if they're not taught it at school, it's being taught at home, you know? So,
Do,
yeah,
do,
there's a lot I didn't know.
do you think that because of the current political climate, and I'm not going to say what it is, I'll let you do that,
Right.
that do you believe that your work is far more meaningful because things are the way they are now?
I do, but I also realize I think it's always been this way. I don't think Jim Crow ever went away. I don't think this mentality since slavery has ever gone away. People that have supported that mindset have always hidden behind religion, Christianity, virtuous, things supposedly, to inflict cruelty upon others. And it is still going on to this day. And we are seeing this firsthand. A lot of people are shocked, and of course, I think we're all just really horrified at how fast things are happening and to the level that they are happening. But this has happened before. I mean, it really has.
Yes.
And I remember when I was a child and they were trying to desegregate. The Central High School crisis was in 1957. My hometown, which was only an hour away, didn't desegregate until 1968, 1970. And so I was a young child then. I remember everything. I remember the first black child in my first grade class. I invited her to my birthday party, and only 3 people showed up. We had 3 to 5 kids, I can't remember exactly, but 3 to 5 only showed up. And our phone blew up with people calling saying they weren't going to let their kids go to a birthday party with the N word. And
Wow.
so, yeah, we had the Klan. We still have the Klan down there a lot, but the Klan was on the courthouse lawn. We had the National Guard come down there. It was a really big deal. And these things have happened before. We had curfews, things like that. And I'm telling this story through the eyes of a young white child. I can't imagine what it was like, and still is like, to, to be a person of color, to be black, you know? And I feel I have, as a white person, I feel I have a deep responsibility to speak out against this. And the arts are the only way that I know to get the message across that this stuff is not okay.
It's interesting that you say that because it's true about the arts. I want to say to you, do you feel that there's been sort of a regression? I mean, the answer is obvious, but I want to see how you see it. It what's going on right now looks very similar to what happened before we were born, after World War II,
Right,
or before World War II.
right. Yeah, I agree. It's to me, it's Jim Crow on steroids, sprinkled with fascism. It really is. And I have read a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of history. I've read a ton of stuff on the white supremacy movements, especially the two surges of the Ku Klux Klan. Arkansas is the national headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan.
Great.
I know. People are like, oh, their numbers are small. Well, it only takes one, and their recruitment is exploding now because now they have found new acceptance with everything. But I've been reading a lot about all these things. I've read a lot about Germany and things like that. I don't think I knew my first Jewish person until I was in my 30s, right where I come from.
Your first Jewish person.
I know that sounds weird to say
It
it like
does,
that.
yeah.
It does. I don't mean that to be offensive or
No,
anything.
no, I understand, but I get it. I
But
get it.
I didn't know anybody, and so most of my friends up here are Jewish, and I have learned a lot through them. And so a lot of these things that are happening now are very reminiscent. The taglines of America First, one country, one flag, one school. Those are 100% quotes from the Ku Klux Klan movement from the 1920s. I
Yeah.
mean verbatim. It's the same thing. So it's been interesting to study all this and realize the correlations between everything.
Do you find that a lot of Caucasian people, white people, just don't get it because you've heard the people say, "Oh, it's not like it was back in the 50s. Things have changed."
I think a lot of white people know exactly what's going on and they just don't want to be bothered because it doesn't affect them. I don't think a lot of people are as dumb as we think they are.
Naive is the word I use.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And willful ignorance is a privilege. You know, it is.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
It's almost like the willful ignorance is equivalent to compliance
right.
in a weird kind of way. I think it's wonderful that you found your way to the New York metropolitan area. And there are a lot of people of all different races here. But are you aware of the fact that ICE is everywhere?
Yeah, that's really concerning me because it's not the fact that ICE is just everywhere. It's the fact that they are breaking every constitutional law that they can, and they're getting away with it.
Yeah.
And if anyone thinks that that's going to stop with just one group, I have been preaching this for 10 years now. It never stops with one group. If you allow this with this group, it's going to go to this group, and it's going to go to this group. And what they're doing now is they're just testing the waters because they can get away with what they're doing now, and then it's going to be somebody else, you
Yeah.
know? And it is.
What do you think as an artist? Because, we are very visual.
Right.
And, I really have to sort of conclude this part of the interview because of time. But what do you think of as an artist? How does it make you feel? What does it inspire in you, whether negative or not, when you see scenes from jails in Latin America that look so much like Nazi concentration camps?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize that the concentration camps they weren't in Germany. They were in other countries, they were in other places.
Yeah.
yeah, it's really it's very concerning. I've actually done I did a piece, a small piece, a sculptural piece, based on what happened before when this current administration was in office and they were putting kids in cages and
Yeah.
all that, and it's with a collector in Cincinnati right now. But I did it with a religious message because all these people that are doing these horrible things are doing it under the name of Christianity. Oh, I'm a Christian, Christian nationalism, Christian, you know. And I did the piece. It showed a crucifix Christ behind, you know, being crucified basically behind barbed wire in this beautiful wooden type sanctuary thing. But you know, they can say that all day long, but bottom line, if their Jesus came back tomorrow, he's not white with blue eyes, you know?
I knew that.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like, let's just say hypothetically he comes back. Well, they probably got him locked up somewhere, you know, now.
Yeah.
I find it very hypocritical, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I am inspired to do pieces like that.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
You know, because we need more artists to use their artistic inclination to make a difference.
Now is the time for the arts.
Now is the time, and
Right.
it'll start a conversation. And as I like to say, quoting someone else, it's like, what if God was one of us? You
Right.
know,
Right.
Christ could be walking among us.
Right.
But I want to thank you so much, VL. You know, I'm so glad I got to meet you. I have chills all over.
Oh,
You know,
same.
because it's very moving. This your work, and just the whole subject matter. You feel like you don't know what to do about it, and if you're an artist out there, you know, just do it. Just paint it. Just sculpt it. Just
Right.
don't be silent. You don't have to say it if you don't want, but you can actually make a piece of art to get people talking.
Right.
You know, I thank you so much
Thank you.
for talking to me.
I've enjoyed it. Thank
yeah,
you.
and I would love to talk to you again someday.
I would love that as well.
We have a lot in common.
I think so too.
Yes, BL. But on that note, I'm going to take my direction from the director, Jim Brooks. Thank you, Jim. And I'm going to say goodbye to the audience. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Energy Stoners Cafe and watching Talk with TQ on YouTube. I'll have another guest for you next time. And as always, I find the most interesting people I can find on the planet. Thank you, Studio Theater in Exile. I love you. Bye.